All right, we'll get started now. Welcome to Module 2 of the ETEP online training series. I'm Josh Simmons, as most of you know, and I'm not going to do introductions because I did that last time, so we'll just dive right in. And happy Friday, everybody. So I do have to just want to post disclaimers on all of them just to indicate that this is not endorsed or sponsored by the EPA. And also just to make sure that it's clear for everybody what the EPA-Tribal Environmental Plan is. What this course is really about is helping you to develop a simplified and adaptable strategic planning and management system, and that's what an ETEP can result in if you utilize the approach that I am sharing during this course. If you just perhaps follow the EPA's recommendations or kind of go in a standard process you may otherwise do, I don't think you'll actually get a lot of the benefits out of it as well. But also let me check real quick, and everybody, if you can't hear me, let me know. I'm going to do a little orientation for the GoToWebinar in a moment as well. So just want to review real quick what we went over in the last module. I know some of you were there for that, and some of you weren't able to attend. That the video of that is available, and you should all have access to that. So in that one, in the last module, I did do a brief orientation and with instructions. I did my introduction, background, and experience. I'm not going to repeat that here. I'm going to do a course overview again, more briefly than I did last time. I'm just going to brush over the course logistics again, but I went over them in detail during the last module. Really, Module 1 focused on understanding ETEP requirements, components, and processes, primarily according to the GAP guidance. But that understanding is important, and if you were unable to attend the first webinar, then I highly suggest you go back and watch that video, and that also has assignments and stuff relevant to that as well that you should have received. And I did touch upon and get you started on the scoping and information gathering processes, but we're going to get more into those today. And just a course overview so you know where we're at and where we're going. So this is Module 2. Module 1, I just went through what we had gone through. During Module 2, I'm going to go through a more detailed agenda, but it's really going to focus on that information gathering and review process. Module 3 is we're going to take that information we gathered and start fleshing out an ETEP, focusing on different areas. In the fourth module, we're going to discuss how to develop a complementary strategic plan, an overarching one that your ETEP strategic work plan or your ETEP flows down from. In module 5, we're going to do a couple Q&A sessions, unless there's more content or there aren't more questions, then those may actually turn into also additional just webinars as well. But I'm open to taking questions throughout all of these modules, so please don't feel like you have to wait until then to ask questions. In module 6, we're going to go through the process of preparing and finalizing a complete ETEP, and this is going to incorporate the other components that are required to complete that process as well. And then in module 7, I'm going to walk through how to utilize, review, update, and really maximize the value of your ETEP and strategic plan on an ongoing basis in a variety of areas. And we'll, at the very end, have another Q&A session as well, or that could be changed into more content if there aren't any. And then, the time and order of these topics will change. Okay, so after we go through the agenda, I'm going to do an orientation in course logistics. Today I'm going to do a review of component number 1, which we went over that in a large part last time, but I want to focus on the tribal program priorities just to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. I'm going to re-review identifying selecting priority program areas and go into a little more depth there. It's really going to focus on understanding what a baseline needs assessment is and this information gathering and review process, and I'm going to walk you through some of that. And tied into these are going to be your identification and selecting your goals and objectives to incorporate into your ETEP, And I'm gonna walk you through these processes today as well, and then we'll do the assignments and next steps, and then there will be an evaluation at the end. I ask that you do complete the evaluation. That'll let you know how the webinar. That will let me know how the webinar is going for you. You can say what's working well, what's not working well, and also there'll be an opportunity to ask any questions as well. And I'll make sure that I'm going to review those and answer any questions that you may have afterwards that are fresh on your mind. But there'll be opportunities throughout this as well. So actually, let me do a brief orientation of the GoToWebinar so you all are familiar with what you can do and what the capabilities are, how to ask questions and all that. So let me just find, okay. So I've I have an intern, Leanne, on here who's been helping me with this process, and she took some screenshots from her point of view, because what I see is different than from what you see. And let me blow this up a little bit. Um, so this is the panel that you're going to see in your screen right here. You should have that in the upper right. And so let me make these larger for you as well. And you have options to turn to full screen as well. I believe that either this camera or maybe the increased size button should work. I mean, you should be able to figure that out. So just so you know, you can go to full screen. So I know that it may be kind of chopped off for you and it may be more difficult to see. So going to full screen may help. This button right here, and actually let me change my cursor a little bit. Well, you probably can see my arrow right here. So this orange button right here allows you to hide the panel. So if this is blocking part of your view, hit that button right there. So when you do that, this will happen and then you can hit this button again to show your control panel. And then you have two options for audio. You can either use the microphone on your computer, or you can call in. So if you're using your microphone, you'll select this option right here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little better. So you select this option right here, and then you got to make sure that you're utilizing the right speakers and microphone as well. During this, I'm actually going to open it up to have you speak at different times, and you got to make sure that you actually have the right, if you have a microphone available to you, have the right one actually done. And then you have an option to do, if you click on the other thing to use your phone, you'll be given a PIN right here and a dial-in number to use. So if you have any audio issues in using the microphone on your computer, I suggest calling in. That way you don't have to worry about kind of bandwidth issues or limitations. And also you have a questions box here. So if you have any questions and you're muted at that time, enter those there. You have a raise hand button too that I would actually, especially if you're unmuted, if you can use the raise your hand button, then that'll pop up and I'll see that you raised your hand and that you have a question. So if you've typed one in, you can do that. That'll pop up. Your question will pop up too. But if you're unmuted, I ask that you raise your hand first and then I'll call on you just so we don't have people speaking over one another. And then, okay, so that's where, you'll see my messages as well. And then, again, the raise hand button was right here. I showed you that. And you may also see handouts too. So I may drop some handouts in here, and that you may not see that right now, but that'll pop up if I do, and you can download them from the handouts dialog right there. And if for some reason I have experienced some sort of technical difficulties, if my program crashes, you'll receive this message, and I ask that you do wait until I get back on. I should be able to resolve any issues and get back on within 5 minutes. So, it just, if I get dropped for some reason, I'm gonna get back on as quickly as possible. So please be patient. Okay. All right, so just reviewing some of the logistics a little bit too. So you've been getting the emails for the scheduling. So I'm doing doodle polls to make sure I get the best times that work for everybody. but the webinar modules will be recorded and available as on-demand videos, so I realize that there'll be conflicts and not everybody can attend. And the videos themselves should provide just as much value as being here live. The access to the resources is through, and the videos is through Vimeo and Google Drive. That did change since Module 1, so the instructions that I had during Module 1 were slightly different. I changed the process. I made the videos available by Vimeo versus YouTube because it's just going to be easier for everybody. And then instead of having you to have a Gmail and sign into Google Documents, I actually just provide you a link that you should be able to access as well. And then there'll be ongoing assignments and reminders emailed to you, so you should have already gotten copies of those. So everybody, even those who have just registered in the past day or so, I did forward an email that had the past assignments that happened after Module 1. So I'm going to do, after the module, within a day, I'm going to do an email that provides a full list of the assignments, and then every work day afterward, I'm going to provide a quick kind of reminder that may focus on one particular assignment or a few assignments or something that needs attention at that moment as well. So watch out for your emails for those, and just try to follow along when you can. I mean, really completing those assignments on time and following along with those will help you maximize the value of the course. All right, so this right here is just a review of what I went over last time. This is just the overview of the ETEP requirements according to the 2013 GAP guidance, and the identification of tribal environmental program priorities, including capacity building and program implementation goals, is highlighted in red because that's where you're going to be spending 90 to 95% of your ETEP development effort. And really, this is what we're going to be, we'll talk about components 2, 3, and 4, and I'll walk you through those as well. But this right here, component number 1, is the most important aspect of it, both in terms of how you're going to be spending your time in developing this and how this is going to be serving you in your office moving forward. And what we're going to be developing to meet this requirement will actually integrate some of 2, 3, and 4 as well. Those be excuse me, those will be embedded as objectives. And yeah, so I'll come back to those other components, 2, 3, and 4 in later modules. Probably module 5, I believe, will be when I'm going to talk about those in more detail. I may touch upon those in the meantime. So I just want to clarify some language or nomenclature, just how I'm referring to things. So ETEP component number 1 is the identification of tribal environmental program priorities. So this may be called by me or your GAP project officer. They may call this the tribal environmental plan, as opposed to the full ETEP is components 1 through 4. What I will tend to call it is an ETEP Strategic Work Plan. This component 1 is your ETEP either going to be called your Tribal Environmental Plan or your TEP or your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. Just so I may use these somewhat interchangeably, just so you're aware of what they are. And this is an overview of the main elements that are required under the component number 1. And so right now we're going to focus on this short description of the priority. So that's the requirement of the GAP guidance. And what I'm recommending is that you use your program areas as your priorities, and I'll explain that. During the last module, I also went through the steps for developing an ETEP, and I went through determining the initial scope of your ETEP and strategic plan. And the scope itself, really, for the most part, is your priority program areas. And your priority programs are really all of the relevant programs that you have in your either within your office, and also there's ones that may not be within your office as well. So this slide, and I did go through this is a review of the other one. I did make some modifications to the last slide. So your priority program areas, and let me actually switch my, I guess I'll just use this. I wonder if it'd be better if I use a different. A different cursor. Trying to find where that is. Dashboard. Oh well. Anyways, so your priority program areas are really the umbrella, and then the long-term goals and the objectives fall under that umbrella. So identifying those priority programs that you're going to incorporate in the ETEP is really identifying the scope of your ETEP. And the ETEP should include all activities and entities regulated by the EPA. So my recommendation is, at minimum, the EPA wants to see the things that are going to be included in your GAP program. They probably also want to see anything that's being done under other EPA-funded programs, so your Clean Water Act and 106 programs as well. What I'm recommending is that you include everything in your department. So whatever is under the umbrella of your department should all be included in your ETEP strategic work plan. EPA is not going to be concerned about those, and they'll tell you that, and that's fine. But in order to effectively manage both what you need to do for the EPA and not for the EPA, and just manage your office as effectively as possible, you want to incorporate everything that you have going on. And then it may include things that other departments or programs are doing if they are activities or entities or something regulated by the EPA, or if there's an environmental overlap with what you're doing and you want to incorporate that. And you can do that strategically to gain kind of buying an investment and develop relationships with other programs and departments and areas that you may not have right now that you want to establish. So, as I mentioned, it's best to cover all the programs of a single department, even the non-environmental ones. So if your department is doing cultural resources and TIPO stuff, like incorporate that as well. And you kind of want one primary department, and then you have the external and interdepartmental activities being added. Um, this step number one is initial scoping, so you're kind of identifying possible program areas to incorporate. You don't have to have everything, and this can change and it can evolve as you go. But during this point, you're trying to identify what may be incorporated, and you may change this even during the ETEP development process. In fact, you likely will as you're gathering information. You may identify new possible areas that you really need to be incorporated as well. But those may change and evolve over time. So last time I had assigned an activity to identify, or I don't know if I had assigned it, but we had an activity in the last module to identify your priority program areas where you wrote down your existing programs that are managed by your department, and then also you wrote down needed programs that could be, should be, or maybe in the future could be managed by your department. And I provided some examples of these. And so actually I want to go into this in more depth. So really, I want to walk you through and kind of engage you in this process of in the initial scoping, the identification of your possible priority program areas. This list right here that I've showed you, this is a list of all the program areas that I've incorporated into ETEPs that I've worked on for various tribes. This is not an exhaustive list. This isn't an exclusive list. By no means should you have all of this, and by no means should you be limited to this. So in a lot of the ETEPs that I've worked on, there would be anywhere from 10 to 15 different program areas. I don't think you necessarily need that many. It really depends on the size of your program. If you're one staff member in your office, you just have two staff members, or even three staff members, you may have like probably 4 or 5 different program areas that you're kind of overseeing right now. And I'll show the program areas themselves. I recommend identifying those by media area rather than by grant. So I would not say that your GAP grant is a program that you should list in your ETEP. Really, you're doing various activities under your GAP grants, which may involve water resources, they may involve waste management, they're going to likely involve education outreach. And there's also general activities that you're going to be incorporating as well. So, you would actually separate those into different program areas. So as you can see, where you may think, okay, well, I have a GAP program and a Clean Water Act 106 and maybe a Clean Air Act 103 program right now, you actually will want to have more because those will have education outreach, and then there'll be general aspects of those that you want to incorporate. So even if you just have those 3 grant programs, you're going to have at least 5 different program areas. And if your GAP program also involves waste management, you're looking at 6 or possibly more. So you kind of want to look at them in that context, not really by grants, but by kind of what area they're focusing on. So, I want you to take a minute and, if you have a notepad, it'd be good if you have a notepad or a document open right now so you can kind of take notes on these things. Obviously, you're going to get copies of these slides. You don't need those as well. But I'd like you to, look at this list for a brief moment, and I'm going to unmute it real quick and or unmute you and see if, what are some other program areas that you may have. So, I've unmuted you, everybody, right now. Um, what program areas are you managing or that you're overseeing right now that aren't on this list? Does anybody have any that aren't on this list? And so you all can speak into the microphone. You're all unmuted right now. Anybody? So, one idea that you may handle more. So I have like a natural resources category, which covers a lot of different things. You like forestry, you may have a separate kind of forestry related initiative. Maybe you've gotten a grant that focuses just on forestry resources. Another idea might be transportation. So transportation or alternative fuels might be an area that you want to focus on, or you could say that falls under energy as well. So any other ideas? Just want to see if there's any out there, any programs that just so you may share a program area that somebody else may not have thought of. So I just want to provide that opportunity. So okay, well, I didn't get any responses. If you have any, feel free to enter them into the questions and chat box, and let me just make sure that there's none in there as well. All right, so let's go a little further into that as well. So the next step, which I had gone over in the module 1, was really selecting your core development team and identifying stakeholders. I'm not going to go through this again, but this is something that you definitely need to do early on in the process. Who are you going to involve? It may just be you, and that's fine. That may be pretty easy. Identifying stakeholders is an ongoing thing as well. So, as you gather more documents and more information, you may identify additional stakeholders that you want, or even as you develop new goals and objectives, you may identify new stakeholders that you want to gauge in these processes. So, for more information on that, definitely go back and review module number 1. So this module is going to, I did touch upon step number 3 in this, in module number 1, but this is really going to be the focus of this module right here, is the information gathering and review processes. And really, it's just the same thing as a baseline needs assessment. So what you're trying to identify is possible priority program areas, long-term goals, and intermediate milestones and objectives. So we were just talking about priority program areas and what they are. I'm going to get more into what long-term goals and intermediate milestones and objectives are soon. But this right here, this is the framework and the meat of your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. And as I said, your ETEP Strategic Work Plan is 90 to 95% of your ETEP. So that popped up a little quickly, but most of the information, so your priority program areas, your long-term goals, your intermediate milestones and objectives, like thinking about creating all of those from scratch would seem overwhelming to anybody. Most of that information should already exist. So there's going to be new ones you're going to come up with in the process, but initially you're starting off with just what exists and you're finding it and organizing it into the ETEP document. And there's an intermediate document you can use as well, which I'm going to show you. And really, so when I say baseline needs assessment, a baseline needs assessment, the EPA and the GAP guidance itself talk about, a baseline needs assessment and conducting one of those, and I'm not sure whether it's actually still a formal requirement or not. But really, a baseline needs assessment is just an information gathering and organizing process. And so I'm going to explain more. So according to the GAP guidance, so in the GAP guidance, Appendix Capacity Indicator B5 uh, talks about what a baseline needs assessment is and what it involves. So your baseline needs assessment is identifying the environmental resources that are needing protection. It is providing information about it's identifying and providing information about existing and potential threats to human health and the environment. And then it's evaluating the potential impacts of these threats to the community and to resources. And I've paraphrased those a bit more, but you can go to the GAP Guidance Appendix 1, Capacity Indicator B5, and you can see the details on this. Um, and it also, in the GAP guidance, it says that a baseline needs assessment is a strategic plan with long-term program development and implementation goals. So really what the EPA is defining as a baseline needs assessment is significantly overlapping what your ETEP is supposed to be and what your ETEP is supposed to do. So the evaluation portion of it may not necessarily be part of the ETEP, but definitely the long-term program development goals and in your implementation goals, which are going to be in response to evaluation of those impacts, this is within your ETEP itself. So doing a separate formal baseline needs assessment doesn't really necessarily, in my opinion, make full sense. According to the GAP guidance, it also talks about a prioritization of activities by environmental program to address identified threats. I mean, again, this is what your ETEP does. So, I don't think it's necessary to do both. So by conducting and updating a formal baseline needs assessment could be an objective within your ETEP strategic work plan. Doing it, or it could be something that you do beforehand as well. A baseline needs assessment could just focus on a very narrow area, and I'll get to that in a moment, like kind of more of a specific baseline needs assessment versus a general one. But you're going to at least need to do an informal baseline needs assessment prior to, as part of developing your ETEP and especially your ETEP strategic work plan. The steps of a baseline needs assessment according to GAP guidance appendix number 2. So if you go to appendix number 2, you'll see these steps described in a lot more detail, or it's actually a one-pager, so it's not a tremendous amount of detail. But gathering existing data is step number 1, and which is also an essential ETEP development step. Another step is collecting new data, and these can happen simultaneously. Collecting new data, I would say, is not an essential ETEP development step. I mean, you can choose to do this, but I think it's just most important to start from where you're at. And collecting new data actually can be incorporated as a future objective that focuses on different areas. So, through the process of your baseline needs assessment, you may identify some data needs, and then you don't have to go out there and collect the data at that time. You can actually just incorporate an objective to collect that data into your ETEP as a future goal. I mean, the process of collecting new data is resource intensive. It's time and resource intensive. And so you likely don't have the time and resources and funding to collect an extensive amount of new data during the ETEP process unless you've identified specific things, unless you've identified specific information and data that you're already going to collect and you've already kind of allocated the funding and resources ahead of time. So, examples might be if you're just focusing on a specific area, you may be gathering new data just focused on water or waste or air or natural resources, energy, so on and so forth. But collecting new data is a recurring activity. So there will always be new data to gather at some point. So conditions change, circumstances change. It's a year later, you have a whole bunch, a whole bunch of new data is out there in the world because the world has changed. If you're looking at the river running through the reservation, that river, the circumstances and conditions of that river are different, and there's new data available on that than there was at this point right now. And then the third step of the baseline needs assessment process according to the GAP guidance is analyzing this data and identifying priorities. And identifying the priorities and developing goals and objectives to pursue those priorities that's the purpose of the ETEP Strategic Work Plan and the ETEP in general. All right, so I want to distinguish between a formal and informal baseline needs assessment. So a formal one would result in a baseline needs assessment report, and it's likely going to include a lot of narrative information in there as well. It may be rather lengthy, um, and it's going to include a lot of details typically. It's going to include an analysis of existing conditions and needs. I would hope this is what it would include, would be an analysis of existing conditions and needs by program area, and then within each program area, then by issue. It should also describe and analyze the known and potential causes of those issues or problems or whatever else is out there that you want to address. It should identify and select options to address those issues or to address the priorities that have been identified. And that overlaps the ETEP work plan that you'll be developing. So an example would be a program area could be you have a water quality program area. And then within that, under the water quality program area, you've identified some of the existing conditions and issues that need to be addressed are high turbidity. Through your analysis and through going through the information you're gathering, you've identified that there's high bacteria in your surface water, and this may be focused on a particular water body. High nutrients, and perhaps even impaired riparian habitat. So that's the analysis of the existing conditions. Uh, and these are the issues you're facing. So next is describing and analyzing the known and potential causes. So high turbidity, and this is a narrow example. Obviously, there's more than one cause of high turbidity, but let's say a known or potential cause of that, based on your research, is runoff, stormwater runoff from construction projects. So, the sediment from those projects looks like it's possibly contributing to the high turbidity, the sedimentation in the water. The high bacteria, based on your research, the information you've gathered, and maybe that's already been identified in past assessments and reports, shows that the high bacteria, one of the potential causes in issues is the a nearby ranching operation. So you have cattle that are in areas that are immediately adjacent to, or that have access to the water, and so they're contributing to high bacteria. High nutrients that have been identified as being an issue, and the source of that, the potential source, is an agricultural operation. So there is a farming operation. They're growing some crops, and that has been identified as a potential source of those high nutrients. And then for the impaired riparian habitat, one of the sources that's been identified has been off-road vehicles. So you know that people like to ride off-road vehicles through around the creek or around the river, and there's paths and stuff like that, and they're riding the off-road vehicles in those areas sometimes directly in the water body bed, especially if it's dry, then that's destroying the habitat. So then the next process within this, the next step is the identification and selection of options. So the construction water runoff, to address that cause of the high turbidity, you may implement a stormwater pollution prevention plan permitting system for construction projects, so that the when somebody's doing a construction project, they need to go through this process of developing and implementing a SWIP, a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And so that would be one possible option. There are more as well. So again, there are possibly multiple causes of construction runoff. Or of high turbidity. Construction runoff is just one, and there are possible multiple options for addressing that. And you may implement multiple of those options, and a requiring doing a SWIP permitting process may be one. With the high bacteria coming from the ranching operation, installing a fence to keep the cattle away from the water body is one potential option that you may identify and select. So for the high nutrients that are being caused by the agricultural operation, you may implement some BMPs or something like that that control the fertilizing that's going on, requiring that they ensure that the fertilizers themselves stay within the property. Maybe there's berms that are set up, but somehow controlling the fertilizing, because the fertilizers themselves are likely what's creating, the fertilizers have the high nutrients and are like running off from the ag operation into the water body. So, and then the last one, the impaired riparian habitat being caused by the off-road vehicles. One potential objective is enacting an ordinance to make riding off-road vehicles in riparian areas illegal. And that's obviously just one option, and you would need to probably pursue a series of options. There are a series of objectives, so you're probably going to need to implement compliance programs as well. It's one thing to implement an ordinance, another thing to actually have anybody out there enforcing it. Uh, so that's just an example of kind of the process of conducting a baseline needs assessment. And the EPA identifies some alternative baseline needs assessment formats. They say that you may have done an environmental inventory in the past, and I've come across these. They tend to be very detailed. And then an integrated resource management plan also could be another form of conducting a baseline needs assessment. And doing a formal one is not a requirement of doing an ETEP, and it may not even be a requirement. Your project officer may not require a formal one done. But typically these formal ones, they may also involve new information gathering as well. So if you hire a consultant to do a formal baseline needs assessment, they're looking at everything. I mean, it's a bit of a process just gathering the existing information, but you may have also hired them to go out and get more water quality data or more air quality data, or conduct some type of community questionnaire or survey or meeting or something like that to gather community data for this as well. And so gathering additional data or new data may involve sampling or new investigations, surveys, questionnaires, public meetings, so on and so forth. And as I mentioned, doing a formal baseline needs assessment can be a lengthy, time-consuming, and expensive process. So if you're going to be going through this, you definitely need to make sure you're planning this out ahead of time, making sure you have enough time and resources to do a formal baseline needs assessment before you actually undertake one. Doing an informal one is what I recommend for ETEP development, and really, like, you have to at minimum do some type of informal baseline needs assessment, because if you don't gather that information on the existing conditions and the issues and the sources, you're not going to be able to effectively be able to populate your ETEP with objectives and goals to meet the needs that are out there in the world. So this is a very similar process, but really, no formal report is involved or required. You may choose to prepare. I mean, I think you want to involve probably an intermediate research document that organizes your findings, and/or you could actually, going through this process of doing an informal baseline needs assessment, you could enter and organize your findings directly into your ETEP work plan. So you can do these processes simultaneously. If you come across existing goals and objectives that you've already been committed to and aren't going to change, it doesn't make sense to put those into a placeholder document, and you may choose to just to make sure you can see everything organized, but you can just already begin entering that into your ETEP strategic work plan. I think that with an informal one, you'll definitely want to have limited new information gathering. I would say, maybe even no new information gathering. You're really focusing on the existing information and data. So gathering what is already out there, what is already available, which is just really going to focus on information and data requests and, speaking with people. So, what you want to make sure that it's readily available. Don't get too hung up on things that are difficult to obtain. So if you're trying to get something from another department and it's just like you've been waiting, you keep asking them every week and it's been a month or 2 months or whatever, you can continue to ask for that. You can always incorporate the information later, but don't wait for that. If you're getting resistance and just getting information from other departments, then one of your objectives is to work with them. Then you have to understand that probably means you're going to have difficulty working with them as well. So just even establishing and building that relationship and gathering that information, existing information from them, you may choose to incorporate as an objective within your ETEP strategic work plan rather than focus on making sure you gather that information and establish that relationship before preparing your work plan. So, minimizing the gathering of new data as much as possible is definitely recommended. And so this was the shortcut that I use as soon as I've identified the program areas, the priority program areas kind of sufficiently, that's when I'll usually begin to enter and organize the findings directly in my ETEP work plan. I mean, I'll usually do a bit of both. Like I may, as I'm doing my research, I may come across findings that I'm not sure how they fit. I just know they're kind of important considerations, information, maybe an issue that I don't know what the objectives are for, and I want to kind of capture that and organize it. And but if those objectives are clear and you know what program area they fall under, then just you can enter those directly into the work plan, and you're already getting that work done. I mean, that's essentially what you need to do anyways. All right, so I just want to distinguish the like general baseline needs assessment versus a specific baseline needs assessment. And doing a general baseline needs assessment and an informal one is really what's required by the ETEP development process, because your general one is going to cover all or most of your areas of need. So those environmental and human health issues, but also I think it should go beyond that as well. Hopefully I speak to that. Your needs should not that you incorporate and that you identify and address in your ETEP shouldn't be limited to what's happening out there in the world and the environment. You should also be focusing on what are the needs of your organization, what are the needs of your department, whether that's staffing, whether that's funding, it's communications channels, it's operating procedures. These are the types of things you also want to identify because you need to establish objectives to address these things. And you can't necessarily address it all at once, but you're not going to be able to address it all if it's not even on your radar or included in your plan, or even if you do, it'll be done in a haphazard way. So yeah, conducting the baseline needs assessment of general applicability is an important ETEP development step. It's really again, baseline needs assessment is really it's an information gathering process. Specific baseline needs assessment may be limited to a single or just a few areas of need. So for example, you may be doing a surface water resources assessment or a groundwater resources assessment. You may be doing an indoor air quality assessment. Those assessments are really, I mean, those are baseline needs assessments. You're looking at where you're at right now and where your needs are. So anytime you hire either conduct internally or hire somebody to do a an assessment for you, you're asking them to do a baseline needs assessment, and they're typically, they're examining the existing circumstances and they're providing, what the potential causes are, and they're usually providing options and recommendations for how to address those. And those options and recommendations are your objectives. Um, the specific assessments that go into depth that have not been done that you need to do, those should and can be and should be included into your ETEP work plan as needed. So if you have identified that you need to do uh, an outdoor air quality, ambient air quality assessment, outdoor ambient air quality assessment or needs assessment, then you can include that as a future objective into your plan. So with the specific in general, this is actually why I wanted to reiterate this is you want this to cover your organizational and administrative needs in addition to the environmental and human health ones as well. And as I mentioned, those are personnel, funding, communications, and procedure. So sorry if I go through that a little quickly. All right, let me take a brief drink of water. All right, so this is what this doesn't come directly from the gap guidance. Your baseline needs assessment is your information gathering process. Um, your information gathering process goals should be to identify, as you're going through the process that we're going through, should be to identify existing priority program areas, which those are as we went through a moment ago, a few minutes ago, the relevant departmental and interdepartmental programs and initiatives, which can include needed programs and initiatives. So, these don't necessarily need to exist already. So, that those are you may need to develop new programs and initiatives. Um, the you should the process of gathering information should also include identifying existing long-term goals and the issues and needs that you identify. Those translate into goals. So if you've identified a need out there or an issue out there, let's say illegal dumping is going on, well, one of your goals may involve addressing illegal dumping. Um, if you don't have a plan in place, if one of the needs you've identified is that you don't have strategies and personnel and plans in place to address your waste management issues, then one of under this, that a goal. Well, actually, that's more of an objective. So let me actually kind of distinguish that more in a moment. But I'm talking about objectives rather than goals right now. Goals are going to be very high level, so existing issues and needs are going to result. If there is illegal dumping going on, then one of your goals is to one of your goals may be to eliminate illegal dumping or to implement effective, efficient waste management systems. Objectives, on the other hand, are sub goals. And same thing, an issue or need out there really translates it into an objective. So I'll go back to that prior example of if you've identified an illegal dump site, one of your objectives might be to do a cleanup and closure plan or to develop and implement a cleanup and closure plan. That's a specific objective to address that. Another objective might be to develop some laws that and a compliance program to uh, make it illegal to do illegal dumping. Um, I'll talk more about goals and objectives in a few minutes, but the goals that I just went through, you want to use these goals to guide and focus your information gathering efforts. So as you're doing your information gathering and as you're reviewing the documents, you want to keep these things in mind. This is the information that you're extracting that's going directly into your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. So I talked about this before. This is just in a little more detail to kind of transforming your needs into goals and objectives. So you have a need out there, as I mentioned, legal dumping, and you have the goals of objectives are to address that. Same thing. It's just you have an issue and a problem, and that translates into an activity to address that. So the goals, the objectives, really goals and objectives are activities. This is what you're identifying in your baseline needs assessment on the left side, and this is what you're incorporating into your ETEP strategic work plan on the right side. So one is the converse of the other. And that's the example I already used was you have an open dump site and cleaning that open dump site, which may involve a series of steps or multiple options, is how you're going to address it. Those are objectives that you're going to incorporate. So before I move on, I just want to see, does anybody have any questions? Again, you can either raise your hand, I'll unmute you. Okay, we got a question here. Sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, thanks, Teresa. I saw that recycling and backhaul e-waste. Were those supposed to be priority program areas? So actually, let me unmute you real quick, Teresa, and ask you more about that. Oh, you don't? There you go. Hmm. Oh, Teresa, maybe you don't have audio? Yeah, you must not have audio capabilities right now, or at least be able to talk. So I'll clarify on that. So Teresa mentioned recycling and backhaul e-waste. I think that was back under the priority programs slide when I was trying to identify priority program areas. Um, so let's go back here real quick, just to clarify that. So this is kind of the initial scoping. And then when I was asking for examples of priority program areas, recycling, backhaul, e-waste, I would say I wouldn't actually include those as priority program areas. I would include those as objectives of areas, things to incorporate under here as well. And that should become more clear. So I would say, with these with these areas, you want these to be broad. And so waste management is going to, you may separate solid and hazardous waste. I actually would recommend keeping them together. You would then have objectives that address the many different areas. So managing e-waste, managing recyclables, managing your transfer station would all be kind of incorporated as objectives under your waste management priority program area. And as we get more into this, this should become more and more clear. So let's go back here. All right. All right. So we just reviewed the information gathering step, and that's just kind of reiterating that. We're going to circle back to this in a moment and go through the process of doing the information. It's really information gathering and review. I know I just said information gathering, but it's the review process as well. We're going to circle back into that. In the meantime, I want to uh, go into more detail on kind of goals and objectives, just because understanding those will be important before getting into that process. So during the initial scoping of your ETEP, so step number one, the initial scoping, you identified possible priority program areas or possible program areas. So step number four, which is an ongoing thing, is really kind of selecting those and incorporating those into your ETEP. So you're really you are beginning to fully define, and that can be an ongoing process. And as I did recommend, you want to include all program areas, goals, and objectives, including non-environmental, if that are covered by your department. So step number five is going to be identifying and selecting your long-term goals. And these are going to be, you're going to have a series of goals for each program area. So if you have your waste program, you may have a series of, high-level goals that may be involved, minimize or eliminate illegal dumping could be somewhat of a high-level goal. Um, Implement effective waste management systems that maximize recycling and source reduction would be a high level goal. That's something where you may not actually achieve it, but it's something that you continuously pursue. It's good to guide you. Um, and I think I had covered this in the last one. I'll just briefly go over it again. So for each priority program area, you'll have a series of high-level goals. These will become more clear as we begin to flesh this out and you see more examples. Um, I'll come back to kind of how your work plans align with this, but yeah, so you want to develop broad, general, high-level goals for each program area. And then pursuant to those goals, you want to have a series of objectives and milestones. So these are really actionable sub-goals. And these are also going to be organized by priority program area. So you'll have a water program, priority program area. One of your goals might be to reduce or minimize or eliminate surface water pollution. That would be a high level goal. And then under that, you may have the objective to maintain or operate your water monitoring program, which is an ongoing objective because that's an activity you're always going to be doing. You may have an activity to conduct a surface water needs assessment. You may want to develop water quality standards. You may want to develop water laws that um, will make it illegal to do point discharges. You may want to develop a permitting program for non-point source pollution like construction stormwater runoff. We talked about it before. So those are all intermediate objectives and milestones that you'll map out in your ETEP strategic work plan over a series of years. And those, you want to make sure that when you have objectives, those are in alignment with your goals. So if you have an objective, you want to, if your objective doesn't seem to fit with one of your goals, you either need to not have that objective or you need to change your goals so that um, those are in alignment with your goals. All right, so I just want to kind of, people use these words interchangeably, and I just want to clarify what they mean, or at least how I'm using them. Uh, So goals are going to be a significant aim or desired result. It's going to be like kind of a high level outcome. Outcome is a good way to, say a goal. When you're doing your work plans for various grants, usually your EPA grants, they usually require you to have long-term outcomes. Those are kind of the same thing as goals. Like it may be achievable, it may not be achievable, but it's definitely worth pursuing. So it's general and ambitious. Um, it's more specific than a mission or vision. I'll get into what a mission or vision is later on, but it's usually specific. It should relate to the mission or vision, but it doesn't have to be achievable within a strategic plan or ETEP timeframe. So eliminating water pollution is a good goal. Like I would say that that's a goal to pursue. Even, you know, reducing it by a certain percentage or something like that. And it's very broad. It's not like, I mean, you could have a high level goal that is eliminate bacterial pollution or reduce bacterial pollution by 90% or something like that. That again, even though you just say 90%, that seems like it might be achievable. Again, it may not be, but it's still something worth striving for. And you may have overall versus kind of program specific goals. So an overall goal for your environmental department might be to eliminate or reduce environmental impacts. That's a very broad, high level goal that really encompasses almost everything your office probably does. A program area goal would be to eliminate or reduce water pollution. So that's specific to your water program. Objectives are sub-goals. They're what must be done to achieve a goal, and by accomplishing these, you're making measurable progress toward achieving that goal. So they're major steps or activities, and they may actually you may need to do a series of smaller steps, activities, or tasks to accomplish an objective, but the objective itself is going to be achievable within a specific period of time. So you may have heard the acronym SMART, and that's what and some people, I'm using that to describe objectives. So an objective should be specific, um, meaning like you know what it says, you know what it means. It's limited in scope. It's measurable, meaning you can measure whether it's being accomplished or not. It's achievable, and you want it to be achievable. That like eliminating water pollution may not be achievable, but developing water quality standards is achievable. So you want it to be something that you actually can accomplish, and you want it to be relevant. So within your water program, you want objectives that are relevant to your water goals, and also you want to make sure that your objectives they're relevant by being in alignment with your goals. If they're not in alignment with the goals, they're not actually relevant. And then time-based means that they have a specific time frame within which you plan to pursue and accomplish it. And you'll be incorporating that into your ETEP as well. So your objectives will be shown at minimum by year. Some of them may be recurring year in and year out. They may take multiple years, but they'll still be time-based. These should be developed and organized by program area. And some examples of objectives would be preparing a resources management plan or completing a restoration. So are objectives clear? I'm I'm not going to ask you for examples right now because I want to keep things moving. I believe that all these things will become more clear as I'm going to begin showing you examples. We're going to be populating stuff. You'll see what's going to go into the goal sections and what's going to go to the objective section. So all these things will become more clear over time. So one thing that I had done that I'd asked for, or at least asked you to do, I didn't actually receive, I didn't actually receive any emails of this. I had given you a lot of assignments, but was to kind of consider 2 to 3 examples of a priority program area, uh, just this structure. So a priority program area, a goal under that priority program area, and then 1 or 2 objectives. And so some examples that I'd shown you last time would be your priority program areas waste management. Your goal might be to eliminate and prevent illegal dumping through the reservation. And then an objective might be to pursue funding to clean up and close a dump site. Another one might be to develop the plan to clean up and close the website. And so objective number 1, you do this year. Objective number 2, you maybe do the year after that. And there's other objectives as well that would then, you'd probably incorporate too. So hopefully that's clear. I think it will become more clear over time. All right, so again, I said I wanted to circle back around to this to kind of walk through this process of doing your information gathering, your review. And so this had been an assignment that I had given last time to begin this process, at least the gathering process. So to download the document information tracking template that I provided, and to begin requesting and gathering all relevant information and documents, and utilizing the previous slides and sample information. I actually provided a sample email request. Well, not a sample email request, but I had an email that showed what I will request from a client when I'm trying to get this information, and then utilizing that document tracking template as you retrieve those documents. And so you weren't really going to, I didn't assign to do anything with the documents, just to gather them. I apologize. I think I keep getting a little feedback from myself. Uh, but these documents are what, as I mentioned, what you're using to identify your program areas, your goals, and your objectives. And I had given a list of different internal and external information sources that you want to focus on. So internally, these are some of the documents you want to be gathering, and there are more. So maybe you have former tribal environmental, past tribal environmental plans that you've developed, or tribal environmental agreements. You may have an environmental inventory, strategic plans, or policies. So you would want to gather those information because those are going to include program areas, goals, and objectives. Your grant narratives, work plans, budgets, and reports. Really, your work plans are key here. Your narratives are helpful. I think you should gather both, but you definitely need to get your work plans. Your reports can be helpful as well. Your progress reports to show where you're at. I have your past, current, and future. And so your past ones, I would say at least maybe go back a year or two, because you want to look to see in your past work plans what your objectives were, so you can kind of see how they flow, but also to see whether there's any objectives that have not been accomplished and that you may still want to accomplish. And then future ones might be if you prepared your future work plan, which everybody probably has. Everybody should have a future work plan right now. They have a future gap work plan they're working on. So you are in the process of developing your fiscal year 2016-17 work plan. So you want to include the goals and objectives that you're already developing for that. You want to identify those and incorporate those into your ETEP. I think it's also helpful to include relevant, recent, pending, and unsuccessful grant proposals. So if you have, another grant proposal that you've submitted that's pending, or even if it's, it was rejected or approved, or putting the goals into your work plan, your ETEP strategic work plan, is important because these are things you're going to be pursuing as well. So program narratives, so you may have ones that are not grant related, so narratives, work plans, budgets, and reports. Assessments, feasibility studies, and surveys have key information in them. Definitely want to look at those. It can be helpful to look at your Legal documents, so your codes, regulations, seeing where those things are at, seeing if there's need for those. You'd want to go look at your tribe's, your general tribal strategy and land use documents, because those have environmental or implications for your program for the ETEP. So your tribe may have a strategic plan or may have a land use document. Conducting interviews and discussion with staff, leadership, and internal stakeholders. And then, really, taking all that and reviewing and recording, reviewing and recording internal staff knowledge, which should actually come from those internal discussions. All right, so now I'm going to walk you through this process. So the first part of it is identifying and logging the information source. So let me grab this folder right here. Excuse me. Drinking lots of water, so. Okay, so here is the information gathering template, and I'll make it a little larger. I put some samples in here of what could be included, how to format these things. So you find the document, you just have the general what the document's name is, maybe what area it's applicable to, what the status is of it. You may have received it, you may have requested it, you may have reviewed it, um, what maybe the date that you've requested it on. So that may not be applicable if it's already in possession or you've requested it, and then maybe maybe an expected date of when you expect to receive it if it's you're requesting it from somebody else. And where's the location of the document? So is it on a server? Is it in a folder? Is it on a bookshelf? Is it in somebody's office? So let me delete these because I'm going to. Well, I'll just leave them in here actually. All right. So you have the so when you. All right. So I'm gonna do some sample documents right here, and I'm gonna walk you through them. So first of all, um, I think it's always good to start with a work plan. So I did get one from somebody did give me some information. This is a sample component from a GAP work plan. So this is a current GAP work plan, and so this has information in it that you want to include into your as you're doing your baseline needs assessment, but you're including this information. This is the starting point of what you're including into your ETEP strategic work plan. So first of all, let's just kind of log that we have this. So we'll go back here. That's a fiscal year 15-16 work plan. So let's say FY 15-16 GAP work plan. So it's probably going to cover multiple areas. It's received at this point. So NA here, NA here. And let's just say it's in, environmental server and GAP folder. So I don't have any, you don't need to necessarily put any comments in here. Okay, so that's the first step is identifying, logging the information source, whatever, the document, the report, and utilizing this information tracking template. The reason you want to use this is because you're going to be getting a lot of documents, you're going to be requesting different ones. You just want to keep track of them, see where they're at, and just make sure you're not asking for the same thing twice and also just not forget about something you may have requested. All right, so the next step is going to be reviewing the information source. And while you're doing this, you're going to be looking for possible priority program areas, long-term goals, and intermediate objectives. All right, so let's just start with this component right here under this work plan. So work plan component number 1, environmental education, outreach education, and long-term planning. So in here I see that one program area is probably going to be environmental education outreach. So I've identified that. We'll get to the point of recording that in a minute. And then scrolling down here, you'll see the long-term and intermediate outcomes. So long-term outcome is make sure that the concerns are understood and addressed properly. And then there's a series of outcomes that's intermediate outcomes. So keeping staff current on issues, developing working relationships with federal agencies on resource protection concerns, and capacity building, working knowledge of RCRA and of various areas, and an approved ETEP. So some of these are, I would say, goals, and some of these are objectives. So, you know, let's do the select tool. The developing working relationships with federal agencies on resource protection concerns, that could be a goal or an objective. I actually would say that maybe you'd make it a specific objective, and you'd be more specific in the work plan itself. Like you would say, you know, what resource, so is it water? If it's water concerns, you may have the same thing listed multiple times. So you may say, work with agencies on water protection concerns in the water section. Work with federal agencies on um, air concerns in the air section. And so, but you know, you may have a high level goal that says, you know, just establishing or maintaining good relationships with not just federal agencies, but all partners and stakeholders. So this right here, this is good information. You're going to want to definitely make use of this. There's a series of measures in here. These are taken from the GAP guidance. So these are your capacity indicators. So you know, making note of these, that's an important thing to do. You actually need to make note of the capacity indicators within your ETEP. So, and some of these two can be identified as objectives and goals. And then you have a series of commitments in here too. And so each of these commitments is at least an objective. So the select tool again. So planning, organizing, and coordinating an environmental fair each year, including educational and experiential activities. Oops. So you know, doing an annual environmental fair, that's an objective, which is going to help you achieve your goal of making sure that people are informed and aware of the issues. And then there's outputs and deliverables over here you may choose to include as well. Briefing tribal administration on activities undertaken under GAP, that's an objective that you're going to want to incorporate. Preparing 6 articles, that's an objective as well. So sometimes, you know, in this case, these were all what I'd say objectives. Uh, they obviously involve a series of steps. You know, developing each article is a separate step. Even developing an article may involve a series of steps. Within the ETEP Strategic Work Plan, you don't want to have that level of detail, but this is a solid objective that you'd want to incorporate. So, you know, with a lot of these things, what I would end up doing would be to condense them more. So, you know, you could copy and paste them as is, but I would try to make them as concise as possible just so you get the main point, because you want to make sure you keep these things on your radar. You want to understand what they are by looking at them, but you don't really need the details. You know the details are back here. So monitoring hazardous waste and groundwater, develop capacity to monitor hazardous waste, groundwater sampling wells. So this has a lot in it right here. So we'll get back to this in a moment. So, but looks like it's a couple objectives going on. Okay. So then, as you're doing this, as you're reviewing this, you want to be recording the information review findings. So you're recording whatever things you're finding related to priority program areas, long-term goals, and intermediate objectives, which all have a corollary, or you know, their opposite is really your needs and issues. So 2 ways to do this are using an intermediate research document or an ETEP strategic work plan. Your intermediate research document, if you are doing a formal baseline needs assessment, that would be your intermediate document. But again, I'm recommending that if you don't have to, don't necessarily conduct a formal um, baseline needs assessment. Just use this intermediate document. It's just more flexible. It's more kind of bullet points rather than a narrative. And then when you identify very clear goals and objectives, you can actually just put them straight into your ETEP strategic work plan. And yeah, like I said, you know, use that option if the goal or objective is clear. All right, so let's try some of that. So let's go back up here and let's extract information. All right, so in this case, so we know there's a couple of documents that I developed that you can use. for this. So here's a sample. Let's pull these both open. All right, so here's a sample research document. So, I just provide a little bit of framework, program area, source. I actually like to organize my research by source document rather after the program area, just because you're reviewing one document at a time, and it's good to kind of know where it's at. So I'll say, okay, we're looking at this document. Actually, I should just switch back and forth like this. Okay, so let's go here. So in this case, work plan component number 1 includes outreach and education. So we know that that is going to most likely be a program area. So let's put education and outreach. So the source document here is FY 15-16 gap work plan. And then now you're just going through and populating the needs, the issues, and the goals. You can put page numbers if you want as well, sometimes it helps, but in this case, I actually like, including the description. I'm going to copy and paste that because you do need a description for each priority program area. So simple copy and paste. I'm not going to analyze these things in too much detail. I'm actually going to, do some copy and pasting. In some cases, I may, analyze it more and incorporate it. So, see, we got some outcomes. I'm just going to group all the outcomes together. I'm going to say, I'll just put this back up here so we can. So let's pull these, and I mean, one of the goals is kind of, to have a document you can come back to quickly rather than going to all these separate documents, and just to help you understand it. So my process of looking at these things is helping me understand what, what is going on, um, and, reframing it as well. Like you may be putting, some of these, oops, some of these objectives or goals may not actually, you may want to reword or rework them. Sorry, I keep pushing the wrong thing. Okay, no, stop that. All right, so assuring, so that's one outcome. I want to record that. And then these are the outcomes as well. Like I may, in some cases I may spend more time like analyzing these things and rewording them. In some cases I may just kind of pull the information really quickly. Um, I'm pulling these because developing goals uh, takes a little bit of, reworking the language sometimes. So, okay, let's see, I'm back here again. All right, so these are capacity indicators. Actually would like to record these. So in this case, I'm just going to record the capacity indicators because I know that if I go to gap guidance, that's where those are at. They may have been written differently, but all right. So let's pull this back up. So I'll put those. I'll probably try to put them all on the same line. I mean, this document will get long. Like, I mean, what's good is you can kind of look through these things and get an idea of where they go. And it's not all, it's not all just copy and pasting. So objective, in this case, so one of the objectives is doing an annual environmental fair. And so I'm going to actually, in this case, put it directly into the ETEP Strategic Work Plan because that's a pretty clear objective. It's already been committed to. I don't think it's necessary. So let's say I'm going to put 2016, and that can say, that can mean fiscal year 2015 and 2016. And plan, organize, and coordinate environmental fair. Uh, that's good enough language. Actually, I'll copy and paste the whole thing in there, and then I'll wordsmith it from there. So when I put this in here, it does it all separate lines. I don't like that. So I'm showing you the spreadsheet format right now. I'm going to show you a Word option later on, or Word document option. I recommend the spreadsheet, but if that's just, too much for you. So you could leave it like that. That's an objective. And, and then what I would do, like knowing this is likely going to be an activity, it's going to happen year in, year out. If that is the case, I'm actually going to make it, I'm already going to put it for the 4 years out. So I'm going to copy and paste this down this way. So I already have that incorporated. And then when I do my next year's work plan, I already have this in here. So I can just copy and paste it. Yeah, so you may want to condense it. You may want to remove some words to make it um, just a little more concise because you don't really need all of that. In this case, the area is going to be, for education outreach, I like to do E&O. You can add a category to it as well. You can add primary staff responsibilities. Let's see. Oh, I have some of these hidden, that's why. Let me unhide these. So capacity indicator numbers, you're going to want to go, so CI numbers are your capacity indicator numbers, so you just want to go make sure that those align. Role, this is going to be the tribe that's doing this. So with your plan, you also want to identify, whether it's going to be the tribe's role, the EPA's role, or both. If the EPA can choose to use your plan, you may, I'll talk about more categories and repetitive activities. So actually, you do have repetitive activities. So I'm going to say yes for all these. I'll get into more detail why. And then in this case, this came from the 15-16 gap work plan. So now you know, oops. So now you actually, if you need to go back and identify where it came from, that's where it came from. But for 2017, 2018, 2019, there's no source for those because they're not actually committed to yet. So in this case, you could say work plan component 1. I think it's component 1. Yeah, so you can say component number 1. And you can add these things as well. They're not actually as necessary. But at minimum, you want to have the year, the objective, the capacity indicator, role, responsibility, or role, the area. I'll talk about categories, and if there is a source, you can know where to go back to. So you know I have this objective now done for the next 3 years. If I know that I'm going to get some pushback from the EPA, or they don't want me doing this year in and year out, like they're going to say, one of the concerns when looking at this, I see would be like EPA may see this as not being capacity building. I'm going to talk about workarounds for education outreach activities. How to continue to make them capacity building as well. But if it's written away, that the EPA will fund it year in and year out, then put it into your plan. That shows, and then makes doing future work plans very easy. So I would essentially go through all these and start incorporating them in my work plan. I have my existing gap plan. This starts the foundation of. I do the research. I extract the information that I need. I'll do it component by component, and I'm populating my ETEP strategic work plan, and you'll see how then this will be a powerful tool in managing your office and your staff members. All right, so let me show just an example of doing another document as well. So let's do a integrated solid waste management plan. Oh, no, I just opened the same document. So, this was a draft of something. So even if a plan is a draft, like it still has good content in it. In this case, this was done by a consultant. It may not actually be used. It may need to be revised, but it still has existing information. So when I'm going through a resource management plan or an assessment or something like that, I'll scan the table of contents. I'm not really, as concerned about the community service area. I may scan through it to see if anything jumps out as an issue. A waste generation characterization has been done. Current practices are going on. I'd probably look at those because those have existing and current objectives. It may identify needs, and then options. These are potential goals. So I'm going to scan through those and extract other information. So I'll go back here. So let's go back to this document. Let's say 2011 draft integrated solid waste management plan. This is going to focus on waste. Status is this is received, so I don't need to do this. So let's say it's also, let's say that we don't have, maybe I didn't, let's just say, let's pretend that I'm not looking at electronic copy. Let's say it was on the shelf. Let's say, so uh, bookshelf, or no, filing, environmental office filing cabinet. So just so you know where it's at. And you want to make you may want to make a note that need to update or something like that. That's not really, that's actually, I wouldn't put that here. Like that's probably more of an objective type thing. All right, so you go through here and then you'll scan through this document. I don't really care about the executive summary. Like, I mean, literally, well, 435 pages. This is really long. So I will, in this case, I will usually do all my work plans first, and then so I enter that into there, and then I'll go into here. Uh, I'll have a waste management area. In this case, I'm going to have 2011. Let's make that not bold. 2011 Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan. And then I'm going to go through this and do the same thing. I'm going to extract out some information I think is key, focusing on program areas, goals, and objectives. I mean, in this case, it's goals and objectives. Like, you just scan it, like extract it as quickly as possible. Since we're, running toward the cutoff of this, I'm not going to go into this in detail, although I will take some time next time to go into one of these documents in more detail. So that's, this is the process you're going through of researching and essentially actually drafting your plan at the same time. All right, so let's go back here. All right, so last time I had given this assignment to do the document information gathering, where to download this. Really, so the assignment this time is to be, as you have these documents, start reviewing them as many as possible by next module, using the steps that I provided. I know it may not be clear. I think it's good to kind of try and struggle through it a little bit, and you come up with questions. But you're going to see me go through it more and more throughout the course of this training, so hopefully that becomes more clear. And recording your findings into that research document, so that this is the research document right here, and recording your making sure when you get the document you're identifying it. You're making note of it here, you're recording your findings in that document, and then if the objectives are clear, then just putting them straight into this template, and I'll provide you copies of those templates as well. Next time we're going to go into some more external information gathering. We're actually going to look at the gap guidance a bit more. I had given an assignment on this, which I still would like you to work on, which is reviewing this and identifying possible priority program areas and intermediate objectives. And so the next steps are really going to be continuing these assignments. I'm going to keep giving reminders of these things, and the new one is going to be beginning to review information, recording the findings, and in a sense, you're already going to be drafting the plan. And then I'm going to send a doodle poll for the next scheduling module. I'm probably going to do kind of the same thing in about 2 weeks or so for these, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff to do in between for those who actually taking the time to do so. And I understand that you may not be at the point where you're able to work on these things yet. Um, that's what the videos are. You can come back to these at, really at any time. Uh, and I'll be sending an email within the next day or so with the assignments and materials. So I just want to see, does anybody have any questions? And don't leave yet. So when I do close this, there's going to be an evaluation at the end that you can type some questions and feedback in. I definitely do want to improve. So we have Ramona. I actually just unmuted you. So do you want to ask your question? Did have a hand raised? Oh, your hand's been raised for 12 minutes. I'm sorry, I didn't notice it before. Ramona, are you still there? Do you still have your question? Let me just see. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm sometimes still trying to figure out this. So let me expand this. Let me see Ramona's question. Attendees, Ramona, question. If you would add page number to the slides. Okay, I'll add page numbers to the slides. Okay, so more of a request than a question. All right, well, it's a little past 12. I appreciate everybody's time, or actually it is 12 o'clock. And so please, I'm going to close out the webinar right now. Please do the survey, and you'll be getting an email from me shortly. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the next module. All right, so do the survey, please.